Good day, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Collaborative Connections, a space for sharing and learning, sponsored by the Society for Oncology Massage and the Society for Oncology Aesthetics. My name is Erica Clinton, and I will be your host for this episode. On today's podcast, we have two amazing folks, Janet Penny and Rebecca Sturgeon. Penny is a registered massage therapist in Ottawa, Canada. Her massage practice focus on people affected by cancer provides the challenges and inspiration that create deeply satisfying work. Janet provides S4OM accredited oncology massage training throughout Canada. Rebecca Sturgeon is the curriculum specialist and lead instructor for HealWell, an organization that provides education for massage therapists and participates in advocacy and research in massage therapy. Works tirelessly to create meaningful and robust interprofessional education for massage therapists and other healthcare providers. As a former teacher of writing at the college level, Rebecca is passionate about the written word and about all forms of human communication. We are very blessed today to have Janet and Rebecca with us as they have co-authored a book called Oncology Massage, an Integrative Approach to Cancer Care. Thank you both for joining us today. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you, Erica.
Thank you.
We're really excited to have you guys on the podcast to talk about your book. I know how much I struggle just with writing like my treatment notes after a session. And writing a book seems like such a major undertaking, but I would love for our listeners to understand from each of you what inspired you to write a book about oncology massage. Janet.
Right. Well, the opportunity presented itself, and that's an opportunity that probably only comes about once in a lifetime. So it was, without question, too good to pass up, but it didn't mean that it wasn't terrifying. And I wondered really what could be added to the topic. So I spent a whole weekend with Gail McDonald's book, Medicine Hands. And I didn't read every word of every page, but I read parts of every page. And I was really trying to figure out if there was anything new to say. I found out that Gail had covered pretty much everything. And that there maybe wasn't too much new to say, but maybe a new approach to look at some of the information and how we organize our thoughts around it and our practices. And what I'm hoping is that the book is part of a very long continuum, starting with Gail and Tracy and others, and is a continuum so that our book sits there, but there would be other works that are created going forward as well. So that was the inspiration, and it was an incredible experience to have a year and a half to write and to research and spend time with Rebecca and collaborate on this.
Wow,
Yeah.
a year and a half, that is a long time, but I'm sure to produce something like a book like this, you have to put the time and effort in. But Rebecca, what were some of the inspirations for you?
Well, I think Janet might have buried the lead a little bit. Like, this was her conception, and she did the proposal and had this beautiful proposal. And I was lucky enough to meet her through Kathy Ryan and through Cal Cates, and just really seemed like a person that I would love to create something with. And this being a topic that I felt comfortable enough to write a book, certainly of my own lack of knowledge, which made it a little bit scary, but also exciting because you get to research and figure things out and sometimes get it wrong and then fix it. So it was an overall great experience.
That's
And I think it
wonderful.
was that collaboration where we had each other to bounce off of all the time
Yes.
that made the difference. I would not want to take on a project like this alone. It would be so daunting.
Agree. Absolutely. Yeah.
Collaboration is such a genius thing, right? We do that in our treatment rooms when we talk about how we work with our clients because we're always collaborating with them. And so to be able to do that in a creative project like this book was probably really amazing and helpful to the process. So what was the most challenging part for each of you? Oh, Rebecca laughs. So of course you have to go first.
I have to go first.
You have to go first.
This is going to sound facetious, but I'll bring it in. The most challenging part was writing the book. Right? And what I mean is the actual like sitting down and putting the words on the paper, because it's really easy, particularly if you're passionate about a subject like this, and particularly if it's of what you do every day. It's really easy to just get in the research whirlpool and hang out there because it's fun and comfortable, and you can read this and you can read this, and oh, you can read this other thing. And like I remember very distinctly while we were writing it, a book on immunotherapy came out while we were writing it. And I was like, I think that was one of the chapters that I was working on. And I was like, well, I have to read that book. But no, at some point I have to write a chapter. So just the actual deciding that you had enough information to write the chapter and sitting down to write it, I found very challenging.
Like distillation, like there's all of this information and you need to convey this much to really have people understand and connect with what you're trying to acknowledge, I guess. Yeah, I can imagine that could be really hard. And of course, being a science geek, as I call myself, I loved it, like everything. I'm like, oh, I need to read this book. I need to read this. I need to read this article. And it's like, right, because there are just 800 hours in a day for you to do all those things and then read all those books and read all those articles. So Gina, what would you say was the most challenging part for you in creating this book?
Yeah, I think it was the big questions like, how much do we need to know as massage therapists to work with this population? And I don't think that's an answerable question, but at some point, Rebecca and I had to narrow it down so that we could focus and write the chapter, as she said, because you could go all over the place for so long. One of the other big picture challenges was the audience. Who's the audience? You know, massage therapy education in different places. Some very short, some very long. So some people will come to the book with a lot of knowledge already, and some not so much. Some people will come to it with a lot of experience in the field, and some not so much. So how to try and meet an audience somewhere in between so that no one's left behind. That was a really big challenge. The other challenge I found was how to organize my time. The opportunity came along. My kids had just finished high school. Both my parents had passed. So I actually had a lot of time, which is a rare thing to have in life, but how to organize it. So initially, I think I worked 2 mornings a week and focused on that. But I found that you take one phone call, throw in one load of laundry, and your time is whittled away. So it wasn't working. So I ended up taking 1 week every month, and I would go away from my home. I would get an Airbnb, and I would work, and I would do whatever was in the area, cross-country ski or hike or bike or whatever. So I took a week every month, which I have to say were some of the happiest weeks of my entire life. Just to be able to focus entirely on what you want to do was so much fun. So those are the challenges, the big picture of how to create and what to create and what will be useful to our community. And then on a more personal level, how to manage my time.
Those are, I think, great challenges to have, though.
That's
Right.
absolutely. Yeah, it was so fun and energizing as well, which is what I remember the most about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I will second that, taking the time. I had the good fortune of having a very supportive partner who we would take weekends again and called them deep work weekends, and I would work on the textbook and he would work on his projects. Somehow it got done.
That's amazing. And a supportive family and community is clearly part of how you get to the end result. So I had another question next, but I guess I'm just intrigued by something that Janet said. So were there things that you learned about yourself in this book?
A few things, yeah.
1 or 2.
Yeah, I guess the first thing that comes to mind, so it must be the most important, is that I learned when I needed to reach out for support and when not to try and muscle through and do it on my own. And some of that support most definitely was from Rebecca, but also from my partner and my kids and my friends who were super excited about the project. So back to the word collaborative, I really learned and have benefited from when to ask for support or help or hug or whatever it is. And that stayed with me. That was a really great learning thing because it was so intense at times that it was too much to do on one's own.
Yeah, I think similarly, I write a lot in different aspects of my life, and it's always been a kind of solitary pursuit, with the exception of the occasional writing group and that. But I think what I learned was how much more was available, like of my own, developing my own skills as well as knowledge, if I let someone in to collaborate in a very real way and have conversations about ideas, how things can shift and change when you work in community, and how important that is. Like our work is so solitary, right, as massage therapists, and suddenly realizing, right, we're better in community. Yeah.
The really important one. And certainly working with Rebecca when you have a partner in a project, knowing that they're going to do what they have to do and take that responsibility is incredible, because you don't have to carry that as well. They're doing their part, you do your part.
It's amazing. So you guys didn't get to like lean into your caretaker, solitary, I'm going to do it all mode. You actually had to share the work, which
Oh,
is
Right?
yeah, I
Yeah.
know.
Good learning.
It was. Yeah.
So what was the most interesting part for you to work on in the book? Was it a chapter? Was it something that you really found that you loved by working on the book? Because obviously everybody kind of took different pieces of
Right.
the book as their work. Rebecca, why don't you start?
Yeah. What ended up being the most interesting was also for me the most challenging to get into, because I wrote the chapter on intake. And that was the last chapter that I wrote, because every time I would try to write it, I would just get like this sort of frozen, like, and then, go work on something else. And it was one of those experiences where it's, I gave it to my subconscious mind, or whatever part of your being processes things that when you're doing something else. I had the experience one day where I was just journaling, and I started journaling about like talking the first time I talked to clients and what it's like and what it is. And it was just like the penny drops. Oh, this is how I go in to this chapter. And I had like the first 2 paragraphs of that chapter, like came whole cloth from that journal. There were very few changes. The rest of it was definitely its own unique challenge, but I love writing experiences like that, where you have something that feels like it's going to be impossible, or I was convinced that chapter would be the worst chapter in the book. And maybe it is in some people's opinion. I don't want to hear it, but I was convinced. But then as soon as that 2 paragraphs came, I felt like I had a roadmap. It's beautiful.
Jan.
Yes. So the most interesting part, well, I found the whole process interesting, and it just felt like a big work of art at times, even though it's evidence-informed and it's practical, but it really felt like creating something big. And I found that super exciting. In terms of the actual writing and researching, can you guys hear the trucks in the back?
No.
I didn't know. Okay, sorry. So you can cut that. Actually, just letting that go by. I think organizing information into charts, I got a pretty big charge out of that, because it gives us something to refer to quickly when we're working with someone. If we have a client come in, we can really just look through that quickly and get some information. And it really helped me to see too the repetition in the information that we need to process as massage therapists. So there are differences whether someone's dealing with the side effects of chemotherapy or radiation or just after surgery, but there are also a lot of parallels between them. And those parallels allow us to really get a strong foundation, because we can use that information to create a safe treatment plan. And we don't have to know absolutely everything. We can sort of whittle it down to a few really key points. So that helped me to really solidify that in my own practice. I also really thought it was interesting, and Rebecca did this chapter about therapeutic relationship. And I do give that thought, but not as much as I did after reading Rebecca's chapter. And I realized that is so critical to the work we do for ourselves and for our patients. And I don't think that we talk about it enough, and I don't think we get enough education on that. So that's a big one. And then the final one was the Oncology Massage Around the World chapter, which was just straight fun because I got to talk to people from a multitude of different countries. And some have very established oncology massage programs in their country, and some are just beginning. And I really wanted to present that to potential readers because some people will come in and they're part of those countries that are well developed, and others just want to start up. So I wanted to show a range of where it was around the world and to give people resources too, if they want to tap into those as they develop their own programs. And there were just some really incredibly hardworking and vibrant people I got to talk to. Pretty much it.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
So on that topic of collaboration, what would you say you learned from each other?
I feel like I learned so much from Janet. How much time do you have? I learned a lot about organizing information from Janet and making it immediately useful and clear. I also learned a lot, got a deeper understanding of the science behind a lot of things. I learned about persistence from Janet, and also I think I learned a lot about how to be a joyful and good collaborator from the way that Janet interacted with me. About orange cats. You had an orange cat, right? And
Yes.
sweet baby. But there was so much. Yeah.
Our cats used to come on our calls. Unfortunately, mine died in the middle of the process. That was a loss.
Yeah.
Rebecca, you're making me blush. Yeah, I never left a meeting with Rebecca that I didn't feel calmer. I didn't feel that I had the big picture in my mind and in my hands, in my thinking and in my processing in between our meetings. And that is super helpful because I can get overwhelmed by detail. And she always kept us steady, that what we were doing was creating something bigger than us and that it was going to be good. Because sometimes I got a little concerned. The imposter syndrome would poke up. And she didn't let that take hold. She didn't deny it, but she didn't let it take hold. And that was so very helpful.
That's amazing. That's amazing. All right. So my last and final question, which might be a big one, but what do you both hope to accomplish with the publication of this book?
Fame and world domination.
There you go.
Well, if the eternal youth, yeah.
Right.
You will live in infamy now.
Early retirement to Bali. I don't know.
I don't know about you, Rebecca, but I never really had that big a philosophy behind it all. So when you asked that question, Erica, it did make me think. And it comes back to some of the basics, is that at least here in Canada, in most schools, but not all, we're not getting any foundation in working with people with cancer. And I think it's a terrible oversight because without some knowledge, I think we can do quite a bit of harm. So I'm hoping that eventually this will trickle down so that all foundational massage training will have at least some information on working with people affected by cancer and its treatments. So growing oncology massage awareness. And I think the more educated we are as a community, the more we can work together for these people, but also the more we can be included in the integrative oncology community, which we have a deserving place in that community. We have so very much to offer. And really just, as I mentioned earlier, a growing base of oncology massage materials for people to refer to.
Yeah, it was interesting how the process changed my perspective and led to what I want from this book. Because similarly to Janet, when I started, it was so big, I couldn't see the end of it. It was just like, I just want to get to the end. And what was driving me was, perhaps selfishly, since I've known how to write, I've wanted my name on a book that is published by a publisher. And it's like, okay, so I'm going to have my name on a book that's published by a publisher, and that's exciting. But then what it became, and what I hope now, especially because I had the good fortune to interview Tracy Walton and Gail McDonald for the book. And I hope that this book becomes the thing that inspires someone, whoever comes next, whoever writes the next thing or creates the next thing that helps the whole community. Like, I hope that's what this book is, that this is the book that inspires someone who's reading it right now or who has it on their shelf right now to go and do the next thing and be the next person that you talk to on this podcast. Because we all, we lift each other up. So that's what I hope it does.
Can I go back to what I learned from Rebecca?
Sure.
Humble, never arrogant, never up here. Like, and that was a nice person to spend time with as we created this. There was no arrogance. So I had to throw that in.
Yes. And I would say that really good people work really well together. Yes. Thank you both so very much. We really appreciate you taking the time to speak to us. This was amazing. And I do really hope that your book inspires some part of our community to do the next thing.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. It's a real pleasure.
Thank you for having us on here. This was great.
Yes, absolutely. And if you continue to write more books, we'll just keep doing podcasts. Just throwing it out there. Okay. Just in case. This is inspired. More creative work from the two of you. But it's been a real pleasure. It's been a real pleasure. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right, collaborators, have a great day. And I hope you enjoyed today's podcast.